Welcome to Practicing the Practices, a learning and experiential podcast geared towards helping you apprentice with Jesus.
On today's episode, Brad and I are putting a bookend on 3 upstream or against the grain discipleship practices. We're moving from slowing to silence and solitude to the practice of weekly Sabbath.
All right, Casey, let's jump right in. This is a great quote from John Mark Comer's book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. He writes, "Desire is a great motivator. It's the engine of our lives. It functions in a way to propel us out of bed and into the world. But if at any point desire is no longer under our control and is instead driving our lives, we're in trouble. Because when you take a closer look at the dynamics of desire, you realize desire is one of those things that is never, ever satisfied." So Casey, recently I was sharing with a group of guys about how a great number of us feel a sense of being overwhelmed with life. And of course, that's not something that men only experience, men and women alike. And one of the reasons a great number of us feel overwhelmed, stressed out, constantly in a hurry, et cetera, is because in our modern life, which is different than kind of maybe even 150 years ago, we have seemingly limitless opportunities. Back to what Comer said about desire. One of the reasons we have a problem with desire is because there are so many things we can desire. Those things seem infinite, from foods we can go and restaurants we can go to and sports our kids can participate in and new things that we can do at work, and all of the efficiency tools in our life, from email to phones to apps, have not given us more margin or space for rest and relaxation. They've actually just allowed us to do more things in the same amount of time. And people are probably even getting stressed out just hearing me describe this. And so when we talk about Sabbath, one of the reasons we're talking about Sabbath today is because though our desires and opportunities may be limitless, our lives are not. We are finite people, and that is not a bad thing. We were never intended to be Thor. God made us with noble limitations as a way of revealing our need to trust Him and depend on Him. And so when we talk about Sabbath, we're not just talking about taking a day off for physical rest, even though rest is important. It's much more deeper than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that reframe on why we rest. And I think for many of us, for most of us, I would guess, that our bodies do need rest. I think our bodies are very tired. But like you said, our souls are very tired. We're overstimulated. There's just too much. We just live in a culture, like you just said, of so much stuff, noise, opportunities, activity, emails. It's just so much. And so this is a way to rest not only our bodies, but our souls, which honestly take a little bit longer to settle down oftentimes than our bodies even do.
And we know that to be true because when we are in a season where we're super stressed, we might sit down and take a deep breath and our bodies begin to feel ease, but we still feel that angst and anxiety because our soul is dragging behind. Our bodies have oftentimes kind of drug our soul through all sorts of traumatic experiences, and they need a longer season to recalibrate, to catch up. One of the things I think that's so important as we talk about rest is to understand rest kind of in its origin. So growing up in the faith tradition I did, Sabbath was just something mentioned in one of the 10 Commandments. It was a description of something that happened in like the Old Testament. But really, when you listen to how Jesus talked about Sabbath, about some of the greater understanding of Sabbath, when God was making the universe, He implemented a day for us to stop and let our hearts rest. Like, this is His benevolent wisdom at play. He knew that we would need time to stop worrying in our modern world, to stop tweeting and posting and working and running a mile a minute, that our minds, bodies, our souls would need rest. They would need renewal. And so Sabbath isn't intended to be some sort of law or burden, but really Sabbath is a joyous invitation to delight. It's about rest. It's about feeding. It's about restoration. Talk to us a little bit more about how we can kind of understand the spiritual dynamics of Sabbath.
Yeah, I remember when I first really started to understand Sabbath, I always viewed it as this really boring thing. It's just like an obedient thing we do. It's a commandment. We're obedient to it. It's boring. But the more I've come to understand it, it's awesome. Like, I know it's hard to stop, but it's also should be the best day. And we're going to talk more about that later. I love Ruth Haley Barton says this: because we do not rest, we lose our way, poisoned by the hypnotic belief that good things come only through unceasing determination and tireless effort. We can never truly rest. And for want of rest, our lives are in danger. So,
Wow.
yeah. So what is Sabbath? And you mentioned it, the word earlier. The word Sabbath comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, and it really means stop.
Yeah.
So this is a period where we stop certain things. It's a 24-hour time period set aside to stop, rest, delight, worship, and it really should be the best day of the week. We, like you mentioned, Brad, live in an era of chronic exhaustion and emotional unhealth and spiritual stagnation. And so few things in our life are more necessary than recovering this ancient practice of just stopping.
Yeah. If you Google, should I take a day off, production addiction, it is extraordinary. Some of the questions on Reddit or some of the posts out there, some of the articles where there is an actual conversation in our culture where people are starting to now advocate for the idea that it's okay not to work 7 days a week, which in itself is extraordinary, that we're actually having to give people permission to take a day off and to think about that. Like, it's one of the things that we're experiencing, and this is one of the beautiful things where I think the church can create an alternative vision for life, is many of our neighbors are starting to feel the crack. And one of the things we can do is say, if we totally get it, and there's a lot of grace here for that, but we might have been designed to live in a different way. And so we understand that Sabbath means stop. Just a couple more words here about why we Sabbath. What does it help us do kind of spiritually?
Yeah. Well, first, when we rest, we reflect the character of our Creator because He also rested. So He set that example for us. And as those made in His image, we could say that rest is a part of our original design. He rested after He created the world. And when He was done, He took a moment, He took a pause, a stop from His work. And so we live in His image in that way.
Yeah, we become like Jesus. I think Sabbath is also an act of humility and reverence to God. So it's us recognizing we're not God. We do need rest. It embeds in us, it bakes into us a sense of humility that I think is really valuable in it. It gives us a posture of grace and mercy.
Yeah, Walter Brueggemann said, Sabbath provides a visible testimony that God is at the center of life, that human production and consumption take place in a world ordered, blessed, and restrained by the God of all creation. And finally, Sabbath, I love this way of looking at it. It's an act of resistance. I'm like seeing Les Miserables playing in my head right now. You know, the building of it's an act of resistance.
Justice, revolution.
Yes, against our culture's values of hurry, striving, and consumerism. And so it's very countercultural, and it really does stand out to people. I love this quote. It's from doxachurch.com. It says, the practice of Sabbath is an act of resistance. It's a holy disruption. It disrupts our schedules, our striving, and if we're honest, our self-determination. It's an act of resistance against the alternate story the world tells us about who we are, what we should be doing, where our value is found, and how to live. The world tells us we are not enough, that we don't have enough, and that we are defined by what we do and what we accomplish. So it's an act of resistance.
Yes, so good. So here's the thing. It can seem like a totally impossible thing. Like, all right, what does it mean to Sabbath? Is it just taking a day off and running errands? No, it's different than that. So let's break it down. What we've said is that there's four main components to Sabbath. And this is ours. It's not just ours, but these are kind of four common ways to think about it. We want to stop, we want to rest, we want to delight, and we want to worship. So from a practical standpoint, one of the things I think would be great for us to get to is this as like the full 24-hour full stop from work and restlessness. For some of us, we might need to work ourselves up to that, take some baby steps. But here's just some things that we can consider when we think about stopping. So on your Sabbath, you need to try your best, or maybe just do it, not even try, to avoid work emails. This would be a great time to say, hey, we're going to suspend chores, that we're not going to do business calls, and we're not going to try to be productive. And a couple things that might help us with that is on your Sabbath, take a 90-minute phone fast. I mean, I know our cell phones are kind of, people need to get contact with us. We don't have the wall phone, but most of us might be surprised, how anxious or how often we feel like the phone is vibrating in our pocket if we just put it on Do Not Disturb and then put it on a shelf or in a basket somewhere for 90 days and say, not 90 days. That would be great too. But for 90 minutes to do a phone fast. One thing I heard that I thought, man, this is really helpful is particularly for those of us who like to create to-do lists. Maybe create a don't do this list.
I love a good list.
All right, so you can tap into that, create a don't do list. Like, what are the things that you're going to, kind of your natural impulse is going to be to make a list of things like, I'm not doing this today so that I can purposely rest, connect with my Savior. So stop from all of those things. One of your favorite formation authors is Adele Calhoun.
I love Adele.
So
She's the
you've
best.
got a good quote on stopping from Adele.
She says, consciously let go of your compulsion to be indispensable. Short but sobering words. Consciously let go of your compulsion to be indispensable.
I want to say this in a whisper. We are made in the image of God. We have intrinsic value and dignity, and we're not as important as we think we are.
I remember being a mom and like wanting to go on a date night with my husband and being like, but if I leave, like it's all going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think we feel that in lots of ways in our life. If I leave, everything's going to fall apart.
Yeah. One of the great gifts we might give to people is our unavailability. So stop. Number 2, rest. So we want to engage in activities that are restful for our body. So here's a suggestion. Whatever day you're going to Sabbath, whether it's a Sunday or Saturday, or maybe your work schedule is you work on the weekend, so maybe it's a Wednesday, whatever it is, do your grocery shopping like ahead of time so that you don't have to add, those errands in there, kind of clean, tidy your home up so it's going to feel super comfortable. Set aside paying the bills for a different time of day, and then schedule your rest. Kind of block it out, right? Put it on, say, I'm going to take a nap here. We're going to watch a movie here. I'm going to go on a leisurely walk here. Feel the freedom to actually schedule that rest, and then find that kind of quiet, distraction-free place to tap into what we talked about in our last episode. A little bit of silence, a little bit of solitude, where you don't have to have the noise. Like this is... when we're recording this is the end of the fall in East Tennessee. Man, there's some really gorgeous afternoons right now. So just go sit, take your Sabbath and go to the beach or go to the mountains or whatever it might be. Find a time to rest your body, your mind, and your heart.
I love your point about the planning ahead required for this. I think that's something that is missed a lot of the time. That if I don't plan ahead and think about how am I going to make this happen tomorrow, and I don't get my stuff done and set myself up well for success the day before, the days before, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Like any important thing, you've got to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
The third aspect is this aspect of delight, and I think this might be my favorite part of Sabbath. Here is all the freedom in the world to eat your favorite foods, read your favorite books, play your favorite games. So here are a handful of suggestions. Invite your friends over for brunch or for dinner, and have your favorites. Eat your favorite food. This is not a day to limit carbs or whatever.
This is not a fasting day. This is a feasting day.
This is a feasting day, right? So again, go on a bike ride, go fishing. It's wintertime. It's coming. Break out the fire pit. Get your board games out. Listen to your favorite album. If you're married, cuddle with your spouse. Enjoy some intimate physical time together. Tim Keller says this, and I think this is such a beautiful understanding of why we need to Sabbath as it relates to delight. He says, because the world is so full of ugly things, we need the Sabbath to feed our soul with beauty. If we're watching the news, there's a lot of human sorrow. Your body, your mind, your soul was not equipped to bear it all. And so freedom is there to go and enjoy these things. And the final piece is worship. Sabbath is a day set aside to worship God. And if it's on a Sunday, if you Sabbath on a Sunday, that might involve corporate worship with your church, but it could also just be private prayer. It could be reading a psalm slowly. It could be listening to your favorite hymn or worship song. It might be demonstrating generosity and giving to your local church or to your local nonprofit that your heart is there for. But take some time to connect with God in a meaningful way. So as we've talked about planning, we've talked about the 5 things: stop, rest, delight, worship. Casey, let's close out just a little bit with some reflections in this moment that might help our hearts and our minds open up to this idea of Sabbath.
Yeah, we always love to practice, have an opportunity to practice or reflect on this podcast because it's called Practicing the Practices, of course. So if you're able, take a moment and get quiet and allow yourself to be heavy on whatever you're sitting on. Allow your eyes to close if that's possible for you. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. And just as we take a moment and consider with God, maybe some of the barriers that we have towards Sabbath and some of the ways that we could dream up how awesome this could be, just invite the presence of the Spirit to speak to you, to be with you in this exploration. Take a moment and get curious about what difficulties or compulsions make it hard for you to stop in your life. And again, we're not trying to be judgmental here with ourselves. We're hoping to get curious. So just take a real, honest, loving look at your life. What are the difficulties or compulsions in your life that make it hard for you to stop? Now taking a moment and imagining your best day ever. Like really with detail, think about what would your best day ever look like? What elements that are life-giving could make your Sabbath a day of delight, rest, and replenishment? Take a moment and play that out in your mind. finally, take a moment to think through how you might plan ahead this week so that on your Sabbath you can truly rest. What might need to happen for you to really be able to stop on your Sabbath day? And really be specific with yourself as you consider how to set yourself up for success with your Sabbath.
Thank you, Casey, for helping us think about Sabbath. And we trust that you will put this into play and give it a shot. Maybe you got to start with 4 hours, then move to 8, then get to 24. But embrace the beauty of Sabbath. Well, just a quick preview. We've got a couple more episodes that are going to come out in this holiday season on the practice of celebration. We're going to talk a little bit about gratitude in the spirit of Thanksgiving, but also the joy of fun, party, and just celebrating wonderful moments in our life. So stay tuned for those. Until next time, this is Brad for Casey. Make sure you like or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Grace and peace.